Hello everyone, and welcome back to Animation Pilgrimage, the show where Whitney and I take a look at every single theatrically released animated film in chronological order. Except today we are done looking at the films for 1982.
Indeed, that means we are now going to look at the shows, the specials, the shorts, and anything else that doesn't quite fit into the regular category of Animation Pilgrimage.
Yeah, because our definition of that has expanded a little bit once again with this year. We're seeing more TV specials, which we have covered before in the past, but also we're looking more into like music videos, I guess you would say.
Kind of. It'll make more sense once we get farther into the video.
Yeah.
But we have 19 things to talk about in this episode. So I'm Whitney.
I'm Janelle.
Let's go ahead and get right into it. Actually, no, before we do, reminder that this is just us touching on a lot of these different things. This is not like a super duper in-depth analysis of any of these things. We might give recommendations of like, this was neat, you should watch it, or this was kind of ugly and gross, you should watch it. It's more so just looking at stuff.
Yes, the purpose is not necessarily to do a big, in-depth review that, honestly, some of these things really deserve. The point is instead to just kind of point a flashlight on it and say, hey, this is this thing, it came out this year, what does that mean in the context of animation overall? And, like, maybe you should go check this out if you haven't seen it before.
Yes. All right, so without further ado, we're going to go country by country with this review. So we're going to start off with Japan. And we have a number of things to watch from Japan. The first thing, which we probably wouldn't have covered, but we accidentally watched this earlier this year, is The Wizard of Oz, which was a TV movie made by Toho.
Yes.
And we didn't realize it was a TV movie when we watched it, so we watched it, and then you did research and found, oh, we weren't actually supposed to watch that.
Yeah. So overall, it has been several weeks since we've seen it at this point. But I remember it was like a decent adaptation of the original source book, and that's kind of about it. It's pretty bland and boring otherwise.
Yeah, it's certainly all right. I also have long since deleted the footage that I recorded for that, so you guys don't get to see any of that. It really doesn't matter. You can go look it up if you really want to, but it's not worth it. At one point, there's a big pit, and the wizard himself appears as multiple different forms to the different members, so that part's kind of neat. But otherwise, it's just kind of lackluster animation and such.
Yeah.
It's serviceable.
Yeah, I think the main draw for that one is definitely if you're looking for a animated version of The Wizard of Oz that sticks a little bit more faithful to the book, then this is the one to go with. But other than that, it's not really got a whole lot of things going for it.
Well, with that, let's go ahead and move on to the first show that we watched from Japan. Super Dimension Fortress Macross, also most often just known as Macross.
Yes.
This is, well, it's a space robot fighty anime in space, but on Earth, and they have transforming jets that turn into robot people, and they pilot them, and I don't know, the animation seems well done. It seems like a neat premise. Obviously, we only watched the first episode.
Yeah, like you've heard this story over and over and over again, but like this was a pioneer of its genre. So it is definitely worth mentioning, and we only watched the very first episode, so we only got a small taste of things. But from what I can tell, it seems like it was a very well-paced show with solid characters. Even for an intro episode, I didn't feel the clunkiness of introducing these characters or the world building. It felt very natural, like the pace was very well done. it's not a show that I would necessarily be invested in because it's just not my kind of show, but it seemed like a good show.
Yeah,
I get the hype around it.
Yeah, it seems decent enough. I also like the idea that it's a jet, and then there's like a humanoid jet, and then just a humanoid. Like, the robots have 3 different phases that they can go through, so that's neat. And this show is very successful because it gets like 5 sequel spin-offs and movies and stuff like that. So I'm sure we'll be seeing more Macross in the future. Based
on different promotional stuff I saw and a little bit of the other research I did, it sounds like another big draw of it is that it has like a love triangle thing going on in the plot. So, like there's love, there's drama, there's action, it's got a little bit of everything.
Indeed.
What was interesting is that disagreements about the direction for what this series should go in kind of hindered the project at the very beginning. These disagreements were between the 2 studios working on it. Studio Niue and Wiz. They couldn't decide on kind of like what genre exactly this would be and like how comedic it would be versus how serious.
Okay, yeah, I could see that.
But the success of its first 3 episodes got it 33 other episodes, and now it's legendary and famed as a pillar of the anime sci-fi genre. So
cool. Good stuff. Next up, we watched The Mysterious Cities of Gold. Specifically, we were told to watch episode 6.
Yeah, which I appreciate because a lot of times when we're going into these shows, I might not know anything about them. So it's good to have like a, hey, you should check out this episode because like it won a ton of Emmys or something like that.
And this time, I think it was more so just the intro will give you the basic synopsis of what's going on, and this episode actually introduced us to the 3rd of the main characters.
Yeah, it seemed to kind of like kick off the plot, really.
Yeah, like this is where we finally get the trio of the main characters. So anyways, it's about a white kid.
I mean, he's Spanish, but yeah.
Yeah, he's a white man.
Yeah.
He's a white man with a bunch of other white sailors, and they're going to South America to find the lost cities of gold. But he's not alone because there's also an indigenous gal and an indigenous boy, and the indigenous boy is really introduced in this episode. We get to know him.
Yeah.
And they are also searching for these lost cities of gold for reasons and stuff.
I mean, it's a lost city of gold. Why would you not search for it?
Absolutely. And so it's like an adventure show about these 3 kids and some
presumably
other
like friendship and drama and stuff like that. Definitely also hinted at a love triangle kind of thing.
Also, it's not taking the history too seriously because at the end they accidentally destroy a temple and out pops like this toy boat that you would absolutely buy for your kid in the 80s.
Toy boat. They get a huge airship. I mean, it's not an airship.
Yeah, but like it's a like futuristic ship that they're gonna use and they'll travel through on the entire series. Also, the intro shows that at one point they're going to get a flying golden bird robot. So
hell yeah.
They're not taking this too seriously. But I don't know if this is for the version we watched only because we watched an English adaptation.
Yeah, the English dub.
The English dub. But at the end of the episode, it had a little bit of a little section where it's like, so in this episode, they talked about this thing, and here's the actual myth and lore around this thing.
Yeah.
So it felt like it's trying to be at least slightly educational on the stuff, like various things about South America.
Yeah.
And I was like, that seems neat.
It's historical fantasy.
Yeah.
For sure. I thought this was really cute. Honestly, if I was a kid watching this, I think I would have been super into it.
Absolutely.
And I will say, as an adult watching it, I do appreciate that it seems to treat its cast of characters pretty well.
Yeah,
For like an
obviously.
an 80s show, I'm like, okay, you're trying.
You're trying to not be offensive and
Your heart's in the right place.
Yeah, it's like you're not trying to be obviously racist. You're trying to shed indigenous peoples in a good light.
Yeah.
So, thank you.
Yeah. There is a little bit of just kind of like, man, like, I do just still feel uncomfortable given the actual terrible history of colonization of South America. And then, try and spin it as a fun fantasy between these three pals, these three good old buddies. But,
Yeah. You could do a lot worse.
You could do a lot worse, exactly.
And the last thing we watched from Japan...
Well, hold on,
okay.
I was going to say this was directed by Hisayuki Toriyumi. And this seemed to be kind of like a co-production between Japan and France.
Okay.
I'm not 100% on the level of co-production that it was, but it first aired in Japan and then pretty soon after aired in France, where France tweaked some things about it, story-wise.
Okay.
Redubbed it, and I think that version was directed by Bernard Derize? It's French, I don't know. Which was a co-production between Dick Audiovisual and Studio Perot.
I'm guessing that we watched a dub of the French version.
Probably.
Because the credits were in French.
Yeah.
So, obviously it's a couple steps removed there. Who knows? But it seemed enjoyable enough. Mm-hmm. All right. Now the last thing we watched from Japan was Magical Princess Minky Momo, which I think is our first example of a magical girl show.
Yeah.
Which it becomes quite the thing. It's an entire genre, but it's about this cute little magical girl, and she just inserts herself into the life of this lonely couple.
Uh-huh.
And
it's hilarious.
It's quite amusing. She has just powers to turn into anything she wants. Mm-hmm. So what that means is at one point she becomes an adult veterinarian, and at a different time she becomes an adult jockey for a horse. Yeah,
because we watched the first episode. But no, this was super cute, and
it's very lighthearted, children-aimed fun.
For sure.
But, it seems cute and enjoyable enough.
Yeah, fast-paced, fun, cute. Obviously, very much reminded me of, Sailor Moon. It was also giving me, Sanrio vibes. Mm-hmm. With just, kind of the art direction. But not so much so that I'm oh, I think this was made by Sanrio. No, it's definitely, its own thing. Just...
yeah.
It was giving me those vibes. This was done by Ashi Productions. The director is Kunihiko Yuyama, and the writer is Takashi Shudo. While I was doing research for this one, I happened across this part of Wikipedia, where it just says impact and influence. And as soon as I read that to you, you were like, oh no.
Uh-oh.
Uh-oh.
I have a feeling I know where this is going, but go ahead and read it.
So I'm just going to read you aloud what the Wikipedia says about this show. While aimed at young girls with the goal of selling toys, the original series attracted a considerable number of older fans alongside Creamy Mammy, the Magic Angel, and is credited as one of the originators of the Lolicon otaku subculture. Although this unintended audience allegedly disgusted Ashi Productions founder Sato Toshihiko, it helped the show gain a 10% viewer share, leading to its run being extended from 50 episodes to 63.
Oh no.
Unfortunate.
In case you're unaware, Lolicon is specifically sexualizing child characters.
Yeah, it's pretty gross, especially it's such a cute and innocent show.
Yeah,
but I mean, that's exactly what...
Yeah, it's...
We don't need to get into it.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's unfortunate. However, I did the second part of this impact and influence part, I find a lot more interesting and interesting.
Okay.
So, episode 46 of the original series has become infamous due to its depiction of Momo dying after being hit by a truck carrying toys. In an issue of Japanese anime magazine Out, series writer Takashi Shudo explained that this was due to the toy sponsor Poppy pulling their funding due to poor merchandise sales, despite strong ratings. Furious with this decision, Ashi Productions revolted and killed the character off at the end of the episode. While the character's death was only temporary, the sequence was seen as a trailblazer that allowed later Magical Girl productions to deal with darker themes. The episode, alongside the last, later inspired a Japanese urban legend linking the series to natural disasters.
I think that's very amusing.
I think that's fascinating because, like, obviously this is a pioneer of the magical girl genre, and the magical girl genre is known for having, like, that weird, dark edge to it that, like, you don't expect coming.
Yeah.
And I find it so funny that it was something so, like, quote-unquote petty for this time, but also, it's so fascinating because that's such a common problem with shows like these, where they're specifically designed to sell toys to kids, getting either canceled or they get funding ripped away because of poor merchandise sales. This will be a story we hear over and over and over again about how toy sales affect the world of animation, TV shows specifically.
Yeah, especially now that we're in the 80s and on into the future where toy sales are the reason a lot of shows get made in the first place.
Yeah.
Like, we haven't talked about them yet, but once Transformers and He-Man,
G.I. Joe,
My Little Pony.
Oh yeah, Care Bears.
Like, those were shows that were built specifically to sell toys.
Yeah. And plus, I think it's just like a fun bit of trivia that you can like walk up to someone and be like, did you know toy sales are the reason that magical girl shows are dark? Like, that's such a, like, that's so, like, you can just whip that one out at a party and then suddenly you're talking for hours and everyone's just like,
Wow, neat.
Wow. All right, can we talk about something else now?
No. You don't. You see. That's fun.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I think that wraps it up for Japan. So that was 3 shows and a TV special. Obviously, we had other things recommended to us, but we just don't have the time to watch everything.
Yeah.
So we're going to move on, and now we're going to hop around a few different countries that made one thing each that we're checking out.
Well, they made more than that, but this is the thing that we're checking out from those countries.
Yes. First up, from Czechoslovakia, we watched Dimensions of Dialogue, which is a short. It is a weird, gross, stop-motion abomination about a veggie person and a metal person and an art/paper person eating each other and spitting each other out. And it was so cool.
Hold on. So this is a series of shorts.
Okay.
There's like 3 parts to this one short. So this first part, the one you just described, is called Eternal Conversation.
Okay. Yeah, it's this weird... They, like, eat each other and then, like, destroy them and then spit them back out. And then they just keep doing this back and forth until they're just made of clay.
Yeah.
Instead of the original whatever they were made out of. It was so weird. I liked it.
Yeah, it definitely gets to a point where it gets really gross because you're seeing, like, essentially, like, this really mushed up food get mixed with, like, metal and
paper
books and yeah.
It's just like an absolute mess.
Very gnarly. But I think... Well, okay, go ahead and talk about the second short.
Yes, there's 3 shorts total. The second one was about a guy and a girl sitting at a table, and then they kiss each other, and then they, like, meld into each other, and, like, they're touching each other and like just become a blob, which insinuates them bonking. And then
Yes.
they unform, and then there's a little bit of a splat left on the table. Obviously, their child.
That's one way to interpret it, I guess.
That's kind of how I interpreted it, because the child is like, hey, can I be with either of you? And then both of the adults are just like, no, I don't want this. And then they like throw the blob at each other, and then they're fighting, and then they're just ripping each other to pieces. And the way I look at it is straight marriages fail. A lot.
So this one's called Passionate Discourse.
Okay.
So I think you're extrapolating a little bit with a child being there. I see it just more as like something hanging between them.
That
It's
could
just
also be true.
symbolically, whatever. Because eventually they just like throw it at each other.
And then they start ripping each other's faces off and stuff.
Yeah, exactly.
Again, very like gratuitous and visceral.
And then the last one is called Exhaustive Discussion.
And this was an interesting one with terrifying eyes. It's two people, and like the one will stick something out of its mouth, and
It's
then
just their heads.
it's just their heads on a table. The one will like stick out a piece of bread, and then the other one will stick out a knife with butter and butter the bread. And then they do a bunch of stuff that complement each other. And then the heads spin around, and then they do it again, except it's wrong. They do the shoestring on the pencil sharpener, and like it.
There's a disgusting tongue. I
God,
hate
the
it.
tongue that holds the pencil sharpener is awful to look at. I hate it. It's so good. And then they spin one more time and then just like try to shove the same thing against each other, and it just does not work. And eventually they're just like exhausted.
Yeah, they like
They're
deflate
cracking
into...
and falling apart.
And like the breathing animation of them as they're
It's-
just like exhausted. Okay, so I want to talk what I think each one of these represents. The first one, you have 3 unique people.
Yes.
You have the person made of like books, you have the person made of metal things, and you have the person made of food.
Yeah.
And through them having like a discourse and the way the conversation, metaphorically, so to speak, is eating away at each other, eventually they're all turned into the same clay heads.
Yes.
So I think it's just kind of like a commentary about how like we chew the individuality out of each other.
I can see that.
The second one, I think we've already kind of discussed, a bit more obvious. You have a couple, eventually something like comes between them and that tears them both apart.
Yeah.
And then with this last one,
You giving me the title makes a lot more sense.
yes, once you have the title, it's like, oh, okay, I see.
What was the title again?
Well, the first one is Eternal Conversation. The second one is Passionate Discourse.
Yes.
And then this last one is Exhaustive Discussion.
Yeah, so they're exhausting every single conversation
Possibility.
point.
Yeah, to the point where it is past being useful.
Yeah,
Yeah.
for sure.
Yeah, I thought this was really cool. Some gross animation, but some really impressive clay animation for the time.
Yeah, absolutely.
I definitely recommend checking this one out. This is directed by, oh boy, name. Jen Svankmajer.
We're sorry.
I'm so sorry.
We're sorry we got that so wrong.
But this one was neat. Check it out.
Next up from Estonia, we have The Triangle.
This was a weird one.
I
liked it though.
Love, infidelity, divorce, marriage, all through the lens of feeding food.
So Whitney, I have to ask you, are you Team Edward or Team Victor?
Okay, so yeah, there's a married couple of Victor and Yulia.
Yulia.
And they're kind of in a loveless marriage, but it's Yulia cooking food to represent her love for Victor, but he's not reciprocating. He's just sitting there reading the newspaper. And then out of the floor comes Edward.
Edward.
And she gives him the food, obviously showing that she is having an affair with him.
Right.
And eventually it gets to the point where Victor leaves and Edward moves in. But then Victor's the one that keeps coming in and eating all the food.
Uh-huh. The drama.
The drama. And eventually Edward leaves and goes back to his wife.
Yeah, we all just kind of like end up at the status quo.
Yeah.
Obviously, the real pull to this one is it's very experimental animation. It's very bizarre, very surreal.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of these cutouts where bits of the face will move around to unnatural positions.
Mm-hmm.
All of the dialogue is just the characters speaking each other's names.
Yes. A lot of the faces are of famous actors and actresses, too.
Yeah, yeah.
As they're, like, trying to
seduce each other or something like that. Yeah.
Absolutely.
No, yeah, this was a funny short. Funny short about infidelity. One thing I will say is that obviously the biggest issue is no one's appreciating Julia's cooking.
Yeah. For sure.
Like, y'all just put down the newspaper and enjoy some good home-cooked food.
Yeah.
Anyway,
let's go ahead and move on. Now we're moving to the Soviet Union, aka Russia, and we're going to watch Once Upon a Time There Lived a Dog.
Yeah.
It also has variations on that title, but that's the idea.
So this is a very well-beloved short.
Yeah. Apparently, it's often quoted in Russia and other countries that see it.
There's a statue of the dog.
Mm-hmm.
It's won a ton of awards, and I see why. This was extremely charming and a very succinct
story.
Yeah, very poignant.
So, there's an old dog that lives with a family, and he fails to do his job and stop a robber from stealing from the house, so he gets kicked out.
It should be noted, he's like old and disabled. That's why.
Yeah, like he can't see or hear or anything very well anymore. Mm-hmm. So he goes out into the woods and contemplates suicide.
Yeah.
And then he runs across an old wolf, and he's like, "Hey, how's it going?" And
I used to chase you off the farm.
Yeah, we used to chase each other, and now we're just kind of commiserating and being old. So the wolf helps the dog get back in good with the family by pretending to steal the baby away. And then the dog comes in and beats up the wolf and saves the baby.
Yeah.
And then later in the middle of winter, the dog hears the wolf crying of hunger out in the woods. So he invites him in during the wedding ceremony of the daughter of the family and feeds him a bunch of food. And then
the wolf starts singing his song in joy.
Because he's got so much food.
He's like food drunk.
And the dog chases him out again.
Yeah, to save him from being killed.
Yeah. And they're both just like, "Thanks. If you ever need help again, just let me know."
And
There's
then a great part where the wolf just walks away
through the stick fence, just like not over or around. He just walks right through it, unaffected.
It's so good.
So I can only assume that a lot of these lines are fun quotes to quote at each other in the original language.
Oh, yeah. I definitely see the charm of this one. The animation was great. The art direction was great. I like the message of these two old rivals putting behind their past to help each other out in their old age. Like, it's very sweet.
It's like, you know, we might have fought when we were younger, but we're older and wiser now. How about we just work together? It's smarter to just help each other out.
Yeah, and this is based on a Ukrainian folktale.
Yeah, good stuff.
Definitely recommend you check this one out if you haven't.
Absolutely. Up next, we're going to Wales, and we watched a children's TV show, Super Ted. It's about a superhero teddy bear and his arch rival, Texas Texas Man.
Yeah.
I genuinely don't remember what the guy's name is, but he also has like a larger guy and a skeleton as his lackeys.
It was bizarre, and yet it made sense in its own cartoonish way.
And Super Ted was brought to life by a spotty alien, and they worked together to stop the Texas Man from stealing a rocket, and that's it. It's just short, sweet,
Extremely wholesome.
very wholesome. It's just enjoyable little short, but it's a whole TV series.
It definitely has that feeling of someone decided to make a TV show because all the shows airing on TV were too violent and mean-spirited. And so this producer decided to make something
For a very young audience.
for his own kids, which, unsurprising, I'm going to tell you about Mike Young, who created this for his child because the other TV was like, other TV shows were too violent and not wholesome.
Oh, I love that.
But he created it for his child, and he kept the brand in Wales and was very proud of its like Welsh heritage. Until he finally sold it in '89, presumably because, you know, his kid had grown up.
Makes sense.
And then Hanna-Barbera made a show out of it.
Oh no. Hanna-Barbera!
Called like The Further Adventures of Super Ted or something like that.
Okay.
So yeah. It's just, I find that interesting. Yeah, this was cute, but also like, you're probably not going to get much out of it as an adult.
Absolutely. All right, we're going to briefly hop across the lake, and we're going to talk about the Canadian short that we watched, The Sound Collector. This, I honestly could have skipped out on this one.
I liked it.
Okay.
I liked it. It hit a little bit closer to home for me, because our protagonist here is a young boy who's kind of following his older brother around. They're going through like a stormy day, so they can't go outside and play. And the younger boy keeps coming up with different imagination, fantasy stories of different sounds that they hear in the house.
Yeah.
And making up stories to go with it. And the older brother's kind of being a dick about it. And not wanting to play along with the story. And then, when the storm stops, and they can go outside, now the older brother's into it.
And he's trying to continue the story, and the younger brother's already moved on to do something else.
Yeah, the younger brother's just like, let it go, man. This was directed by Lynn Smith, and very rough animation, very experimental, again, with
Cut
like
out
the
faces.
cut out. It's not super appealing to me, but I think it's an interesting medium.
This was paid for by the Canadian broadcast network thingy. I can't remember what it's called, but it's all about Canadians doing Canadian things for Canadian
Encouraging
audience.
Canadian art, yeah.
Yeah, which I think is a great thing.
I know. I love systems like that.
So I think I understand why you relate to it and I don't.
Because you're an older brother?
You relate to the younger brother who's trying to do things with their older siblings, and I relate to the older sibling who I thought was the main character, and just like has the younger siblings following them around, and you're just like, piss off, I want to do my own thing.
Yeah, I was like, ouch, this one hurts me, actually.
And I'm like, yeah, I know this pain of the younger sibling.
High five.
Yeah. All right. Now, we're going back across the pond, and we're going to the United Kingdom as we watched multiple things from this country.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, first up, we watched Conversation Pieces on Probation. So this is one of the first Aardman shorts.
Yeah, hi Aardman, it's good to see ya.
This short it took audio from some sort of meeting sounds like some sort of business, and a guy's trying to take off a day to go see his brother who's on probation. And that's it. That's the whole short, is just the audio from this conversation as it was recorded, and they're just like animating to it. Mm-hmm. It's an interesting dive into this is the kind of thing that Ralph Bakshi
wishes he was doing. How often do we say that?
I mean, this is what Ralph Bakshi was doing. He just filmed
recording people and then animating it.
Yeah, so this is the same idea. This is also pretty rough. The models that they use are all pretty ugly, honestly, and they don't have the Aardman TM style because obviously they haven't developed it yet.
Yeah. It is interesting to see, to be honest. Like, I don't understand most of what's being said. Mm-hmm. But obviously this is just kind of experimental. It's working on getting characterization. There is some really nice character acting going on in these clay models that make the characters really feel alive, even if it is quite rough. And the first of these conversation pieces that Aardman does, they do 5 of these between 82 and 83.
Okay.
And then we will also be seeing more of Aardman before the end of the decade.
Okay, awesome.
Yeah.
Good stuff. They're getting started. Mm-hmm. And, I mean, Aardman claymation animation is something that a lot of people know nowadays.
Yeah, yeah.
When did they do their first Wallace and Grommet, I wonder?
Like 89.
89?
Yeah,
okay,
yeah.
Okay.
We'll be talking about, like I said, them before the end of the decade, and yeah, Wallace and Grommet is on that list.
So within the next 5-6 years or so, in real time.
Yeah.
All right, next up, we watched The Snowman, which was the #1 recommended thing we watched for this episode.
Yeah, lots of people.
So many people wanted us to watch The Snowman, and I see why.
Oh yeah, this is definitely one I remember seeing a handful of times as a kid. Mm-hmm. But it's been a long time since I've seen it, and I appreciate it a lot more now as an adult.
I don't know if I've ever watched this, but I have read the storybook based on this, mm-hmm. which the art style is the same illustration style.
Yeah.
Now,
super impressive, like, colored pencil animation.
Oh, yeah. The animation is so expertly done. Anyways, it's the story of it snows a lot. A kid goes out, builds a snowman. It comes to life in the middle of the night. They go on adventures in his house, and then they fly around, and they go to the North Pole and see Santa Claus and take him back just before the sun rises, and he goes back into bed, and then he wakes up? ? Mm-hmm. And he goes outside, and the snowman is melted.
Yeah. Sad.
But he still has the scarf in his pocket that he got from Santa, saying it was real. It wasn't just a dream. Mm-hmm. And
it's very much kind of like Polar Express, kind of.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Polar Express or the Snowman story.
Frosty
the Snowman, that kind of thing. The song that plays in this, we're walking in the air.
Yeah, Walking in the Air by Howard Blake.
I have heard that song numerous times.
Oh, yeah.
Never knew where it was from.
Yeah, it's from this.
It's from this short, and I'm just like, oh my god.
What a good song.
Whoa, yeah, that's a great song. I love
Like,
I love that song.
It's just gorgeous. And, like, the animation in this is gorgeous. The art direction's gorgeous.
Absolutely.
I 100% see why this was recommended so highly. And, yeah, if you have not seen it, I recommend checking it out. Because it is so good. Just a classic. This was directed by Diane Jackson. The book is from 1978 by Raymond Briggs. And the short actually elaborates a little bit more in places that the book didn't. Like, it changes the boy and the snowman from, like, riding in a car to driving around in, like, a motorcycle. Because it's just, like, more fun with animation. And one of the animators had a motorcycle.
Okay. Yeah.
And I think also the whole Santa sequence is added.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, this one's so good, and it has such a good song and score to go with it. Because again,
It's
not
just hauntingly
any
sad
dialogue.
and beautiful.
Yeah, not any dialogue except for
Like-
the lyrics of the song.
And like a brief introduction by the author. Yeah, where he's just like, it was a day like this, it snowed a lot, and then that's the day I built the snowman.
Yeah.
And then no dialogue for the rest of it. Yeah, it's good. One last thing that we kind of watched from the United Kingdom is Pink Floyd's The Wall, which is an entire movie based on Pink Floyd's The Wall, the album.
Yes.
They made a movie around their entire album, and there was not enough animation in this movie to count it for regular AnimationPilgrimage. But there are some exquisitely animated segments for this movie.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, honestly, it's experimental. It's extremely detailed, but honestly, I think it's some of the most beautiful animation we saw this year, hands down.
Absolutely. We did not watch the whole movie. We kind of skipped around just to find the animated segments. So we didn't get the full story of what was supposed to be happening. But I think that's fine. As far as I can tell, the main character is scared of women and or vaginas. Because there are a lot of vagina monsters.
It's always really funny watching you do analysis. I mean, I picked up on that too. I would just
I'm
say
sure there's something deeper to it than that, but like that's a lot of what the imagery was immediately saying.
Yeah, I was like, oh man, this main character has a problem with the women. But also, yeah, it's like there's a lot of sensuality to it, very anti-establishment, very like this character is dealing with their past traumas to try and like break down the walls around him kind of thing.
Something to that extent, probably.
Right. And like again, this is just us watching the animated bits of it. So like I don't have the full context of the movie. I know it's very highly regarded. And I'll probably watch it at some point. I just haven't. But yeah, the animated sequences were marvelous. I thought they were really cool.
Absolutely. I loved it. It was great looking.
The movie itself is directed by Alan Parker, who's known for several other musical films, such as Fame from 1980 and Evita from 1996.
Okay.
The animator, the only animator I saw credited here was Gerald Scarfe, I think it's Scarface, who is an editorial cartoonist, not an animator. He's extremely well known for his caricatures, and he is later hired on by Disney to be like the art director for Hercules.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Huh.
It's one of those things where if you saw his drawings, you would immediately recognize his art.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
Neat. All right, well, that's it for the United Kingdom. So now we're going to the final country we're talking about today, which is the United States of America. And let's start off with some shorts. We're gonna start with Enter Life. Sorry, not the Metallica song. Enter Life. It's a short made for, which museum was it? I have it on screen.
Yeah.
It was made for a museum to talk about the early creation of basic composition and single cell organisms.
Sure, yeah. I mean, basically.
Yeah, it's like basic elements and how life started,
like
maybe,
amoebas,
on Earth.
like growing into other things.
And then like single cells splitting into multiple cells and stuff like that. It's very short. There's not a lot of talking. It doesn't make a lot of sense. But it sure is pretty to look at, I guess.
And you know what? It's Faith Hubley. And you know who we appreciate here on this show?
The Hubleys.
The Hubleys. Mm-hmm. Pioneers they are.
Faith Hubley and her husband both worked on this one. It's just she was like the lead director.
The director. Well, plus John Hubley probably can't really put his name on a whole lot because of...
Right, yeah.
The whole McCarthyism thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's totally a communist. He's not, but okay.
But okay. He can't get work now. Thanks, assholes.
Yep.
Anyway. Neat art direction, I suppose. Yeah, so this was commissioned by the Smithsonian Institution, and this played there for years. And that's cool.
That's really cool.
Anyway.
All right, next up, we watched Vincent.
I love this one so much.
Tim Burton is here, baby.
Hi, Tim Burton.
He's making his first short with stop motion animation about a small kid named Vincent who wants to be Vincent Price and live a dark, goth, macabre life and reads Vincent van Gogh. And the whole thing is... Sorry.
Reads what?
Edgar Allan Poe.
There you go. Thank you.
Sorry, Vincent van Gogh.
Edgar Allan Poe.
Edgar Allan Poe. That's how my main...
That's how your brain works. I get it. I get it.
Anyways, it's just a fun little short about a dark kid who wants to be dark and goth, and it is peak Tim Burton style. It's his weird pointy shaped people and tiny fingers and big bodies and weird proportions, and it's great. And the whole thing is read by Vincent Price.
Yeah. You hadn't seen this one.
No, I had not.
And I see it delighted you.
Oh, it was lovely. I thrived on Tim Burton style aesthetic in my childhood because I grew up in a deeply Christian conservative household, and it was a breath of fresh, dark, musty air.
Yes. I was going to say, as someone who loved Tim Burton and Edgar Allan Poe as a kid.
Oh, yeah, same.
Yeah, I remember watching this one a long time ago on DVD of The Nightmare Before Christmas and just falling in love with it. I love how melodramatic the kid is in envisioning his fantasies of dying and everything. I also just love Tim Burton's history with Disney, where he's hired in at the company around the time they're doing The Fox and the Hound, and he hates it.
Oh yeah.
He hates it because he's put on as an assistant animator for the cute puppy and fox.
And this is what he
Frank
wants.
and Ollie.
And instead, this is the kind of thing that he would prefer to be doing.
Right. So some of the higher ups at Disney, saw Burton's work and obviously brought him into the company, and they're like, okay, this kid's talents are kind of wasted here. So they let him produce his own short. So Disney actually funded this project and got him in contact with Vincent Price and everything. And Burton and Vincent Price became friends after this.
Hell yeah.
Yeah, until Price's death in 93 or something like that.
Okay.
Yeah. So Vincent Price also does a role in Edward Scissorhands later on. And I want people to know, too, like, I know Burton isn't as highly regarded nowadays for good enough reason, but there was a time period in, like, the 90s and aughts where, like, Tim Burton was very counterculture, very breath of fresh air, very influential for both of our childhoods, I would say.
And I mean, he's still doing stuff today.
Oh, for sure.
He directed Wednesday.
Yeah.
Which people love on Netflix and stuff.
For sure. But he's definitely gone through his, like, ups and downs of public favor.
He's too popular now. He's mainstream goth.
I mean, people have other complaints, too, about stuff that he said or this and that. For sure. But yeah, I love stuff like this. Animation was also produced and animated by Rick Hendricks, so that should not be ignored. This had a $60K budget. And I think that this one's just super charming. It's one of my favorite shorts here, so absolutely check it out if you haven't.
Next up, we're going to TV specials. Not shorts anymore, but we're on to the TV. Wait, nope, sorry, shoot, I skipped one. We have another short.
Oh, yeah, one more short.
The Great Cognito. It's audio of some sort of comedian.
But you know what? It's not even.
It's not?
It's not. It's not even audio of a comedian. It's just someone pretending to be a comedian. Yeah.
That makes it so much worse.
I know.
It's some guy pretending to be a comedian trying to do impersonations of various
World War II era
World War II figures and then just parodying World War II movies. And it's ugly and gross because it's all caricatures and it's incredibly racist. And it's not funny at all at any point.
Yeah, and you know, I would, like, this aged like sour milk, for one.
Yeah.
But two, I think the animation actually does this a disservice. Because the frantic energy of whoever is giving this performance of a stand-up comedian
is not represented well in the animation.
Exactly, and I think that the voice actor's own frantic energy and seeing that would have aided the quote-unquote comedy in this bit a lot more. But the animation here, there's some neat visual gags, there's some neat transitions, and the caricatures are impressive for being all claymation, but they just kind of
it's too stiff.
Yeah, it's just kind of stiff and just kind of hinders things, which is too bad, because this is directed by Will Vinton, who has done some other really neat shorts in the past that we've praised quite a bit.
And I know Will Vinton is one of those claymation people that people really love. I just don't think this was one of his best works.
No. Like, artistically, it's still impressive in many aspects, but overall as a piece, it comes off really flat, and it's aged poorly.
Yeah. All right, now we're going to watch some specials.
Yeah!
So let's start with a Christmas special. We watched Ziggys Gift. I don't know who this character is, but I recognize the hell out of him. He's this weird little lumpy guy, I guess named Ziggy. And this was charming as hell.
This was delightful.
Oh my god, this was great. It's about this little guy. He wanders around. In this short, he is a street corner Santa, but because he's so good-hearted, he can just kind of pull money. He's like gifted money by heaven or angels or some shit.
Magic.
Yeah, he gets magic money to give to people to like actually help good services and stuff. And he's being followed by this like pickpocket guy who is so fun to watch. He's so enjoyable, and there's also a cop trying to track him down.
Because they're rounding up all these street corner Santas because it's actually a whole grift that's going on.
Where they're pretending to help people, but they're actually just taking the money for themselves.
Yes.
And the main character gets accidentally roped into it, but he's doing good things. And at the end, they end up at an orphanage, and they're giving gifts to everybody, and it's just heartwarming and charming, and the animation is gorgeous.
It's so good. This is directed by Richard Williams.
Yay!
Woo woo. It has got that classic Richard Williams extreme exaggeration going on. I think the biggest tells of this being a Richard Williams directed project is both the pickpocket thief character, who's very reminiscent of something we'll see in like Thief and the Cobbler. And then also there's this sequence where there's this like window shop wind up Santa just going like ho ho ho, but it's kind of like breaking down as Ziggy's passing it, and the way it just deteriorates
and like falls on the floor and stuff.
You think it's done, and then it just keeps going. It just keeps melting, and like that is such a Richard Williams like principle of animation, I'd almost say. A huge tell of his influence is just like this extreme, like how far can you take it?
Was he involved in the Raggedy Ann and Andy movie?
Yeah, he was the director of that too.
Okay, I was pretty sure, yeah. It shows so much.
There's also a couple of other important animators to talk about who worked on this, and that is Eric Goldberg, who later goes on to be a very influential animator during the Disney Renaissance. He was the animator for Genie.
Okay, awesome.
And Tom Sito, who had a huge hand in the renaissance of animation, both at Disney, and then he moved over to DreamWorks and did a lot of the animation over there and was influential in the startup of that company. So, yeah, cool to see both of them here on this. Ziggy is created by Tom Wilson, and yeah, this short is delightful. Why isn't this one of those that gets shown on TV all the time?
I don't know. I can only assume it's some sort of like copyright on Ziggy the character.
Either that or the like song that's used in the short or something like that.
I don't know. But this was really good. If people should look it up and watch it. If you want an enjoyable Christmas short. I don't like Christmas shorts.
Yeah, when we highly recommend a Christmas short, you know it's good, because we generally find it kind of insufferable.
But no, like, this has the right level of, like, poking fun at the saccharine bye Christmas shtick, and also not diving super deep into God bless us, everyone.
Oh, yeah, without feeling just, like, so hokey and fake. This feels very genuine and very just like you feel the spirit of giving in it.
Oh yeah, it's
for sure.
It's good. It's great. I love it. All right, moving on to another thing that I used to love but have fallen out of favor with. Here comes Garfield.
Oh, Garfield.
The very first Garfield animated special.
I am shocked that it's this early. Like, this is like I know Garfield's old, but like I was like, it's older than Transformers?
Apparently.
Like for some reason specifically, Transformers is the one that always comes to mind when I'm like 80s cartoons. But like we're not going to get into Transformers until 84.
84, 85, stuff like that. Yeah.
And I think of Garfield as more like, oh, well, Garfield's got to be like late 80s. But no, here, 82.
I read
first
so
Garfield
much,
short.
Yeah, I read so much Garfield in the 90s.
I mean, it should also be said, we grew up in Indiana, which is where Jim Davis, the creator of Garfield, is from. So Garfield is like national heritage to Indiana.
So, yeah, this was just a Garfield short. It's where the voice of Garfield was invented.
Like, I guess.
I mean, because this is the first time he was animated and voiced.
Yeah.
So this is the first time Garfield was given a voice. I gotta say, it's very strange going back and consuming Garfield now.
In like its purest form.
In the purest, nicest form, because Garfield at this point in the year 2023 has been memed to hell and back.
Yeah.
So it's weird to just see actual Garfield again.
Yeah, like not Garfield minus Garfield, not Abomination, Eldritch Horror Garfield.
Anything in between Garfield. It's
Like,
just
this is
regular Garfield.
This is old enough Garfield too that he doesn't even have the modern design yet.
Yeah,
Like
he still has like vaguely cat-like legs, and he's got more detailed stripes on him and stuff.
Odie's the older design too.
Like, he's not original giant cat Garfield, but he's not modern Garfield by any means.
For sure. Yeah, it's super interesting. This was directed by Phil Roman, produced by Bill Melendez, who was also the producer for a lot of the Peanut shorts. And apparently Charles Schultz advised on some of the animation for Garfield. And you know what one of his specific notes was?
What?
Garfield's feet are too small. Which I find hilarious because when
his
we
feet
were
now are ginormous.
Well, because when we were watching the short, you're like, oh wow, it's older Garfield. His feet aren't huge.
Yeah. I mean, it's true. He's got more of like a cat paw instead of like a foot long lump of a foot that he does now.
Yeah. But I also find it interesting Charles Schultz was involved, and Bill Melendez, because especially at the beginning of this short, you can see some animation of Garfield doing his little dance. And I was like, that's very Snoopy.
Yeah, I guess that makes sense.
Yeah, and so
Schultz
like
was involved in that.
Yeah, like I can see, like, it's just, you know. So this was made after the 1980 Garfield at Large book topped bestseller lists.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah, Garfield Mania, I think, is just about ready to...
It's peaking.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's peaks for a long time.
Yeah, it doesn't go away for a very long time.
And this aired along a rerun of 1966's It's the Great Pumpkin, Charlie Brown. And so this was seen by like 50 million people. And was a big success. So, like, it's just going to help skyrocket Garfield.
There's more Garfield specials. He eventually gets multiple TV shows.
This is the first of 12 shorts that are made between 1982 and 1991.
12?
Yeah.
In 9 years.
Yeah.
Oh, we're probably not going to watch most of them.
No.
But it's important to note the first one here.
We haven't even watched all the Peanuts specials for animation. Like, and a lot of the Peanuts specials are in higher regard than Garfield specials in particular. So,
For sure. All right.
Oh, I also wanted to say, what the hell, John?
The man's depressed, Tennille. Yes, his dog disappears and he does not give a shit about it for over 24 hours.
This man, okay, hold on. This man lets his animals outside. Unsupervised. They go terrorize the neighbor's animals. His dog disappears. Doesn't do anything about it. Asks his cat about where the dog is. Then decides to cook like a 10-course meal for himself.
And leaves it on the table and goes to bed.
And goes to bed. Garfield eats it. And then Garfield ends up going to save Odie. Comes back. And John's like, man, I was so depressed thinking about, worried where you two were.
You were two off doing your thing all night. And I was sitting here crying to myself. And I'm like, no, you weren't. You were asleep.
What the hell, John? Anyway.
All right. We have two things left to talk about, neither of which we got any sort of video clips for, but that's fine. The first one I want to talk about very briefly is the fact that we forgot to watch something on our miles-long list.
Whoops.
We didn't watch any television shows from America. There was one we were going to watch, and that was Hanna-Barbera's Pac-Man.
Which, I don't think we need to watch it. It's more so just interesting to note that, hey, look, it's a Hanna-Barbera TV show, and it's about Pac-Man.
The first video game TV show.
Yeah.
The animation quality is garbage.
Yeah.
I was looking stuff up to make the list of things to watch, so I did watch like the intro and a little bit of the first episode. And I'm like, yeah, this looks like general Hanna-Barbera schlock.
Look, they're producing like 80 shows a year.
Yeah, it doesn't mean I like it.
I know.
But yeah, just noting that happened. Also, there was the Incredible Hulk had a TV show for 12 episodes. And The Little Rascals had a TV show for like 12 episodes.
What was that other one too? The Gary Coleman show?
Yeah, the Gary Coleman show, which was an animated show about a very famous child actor. Mm-hmm. Little black kid. Apparently was extremely famous.
Well, it's one of those things I recognize his name, but all those shows are a bit too old for me. I don't recognize his face or anything.
Yeah, because he was a child actor at the end of the 70s into the early 80s.
Right.
And we weren't born until the 90s.
Yeah, so I recognize his name, but I don't recognize him.
Mm-hmm. And the last thing we're going to talk about today is something that makes our job very hard.
Yeah.
And that is Tron.
Hi, Tron.
How you doing?
You were quite the pioneer of your time.
You were experimenting with what would later become green screen or blue screen technology.
Well, blue screen technology was used in Mary Poppins.
Okay. Well, this is you taking it to the next level. And you are animation pretending to be live action.
Right. So, Tron is most widely regarded as a huge pioneer in special effects, which it is. It is a huge pioneer in special effects. However, it should also be noted that a lot of Tron's special effects are actually kind
Just
of
animation.
tricks. They're tricks. They're hand-painted animated cells being put on top of the live action footage. Mm-hmm. So like a lot of the like blue lights that Tron is well known for is actually just animation being put on top of the film footage and not like a special effect like you would think of.
It's painted cells and not like computers making visual effects or anything.
Right. It does have some computer animated effects, which are obviously dated nowadays, but were groundbreaking at the time. But it does not have as much computer animation pulling the work of the special effects as
you think it
they marketed the movie to have when it came out. And this is problematic for us because it's one of the first examples of something that is really majority animated.
But doesn't say that it is.
Yeah, but doesn't really count as animation because it didn't market itself that way. Like, it's not...
It makes it hard for us to decide, do we watch movies like this or not? Because if we do, eventually we'll be watching every movie that came out ever.
Right, exactly.
Because Marvel movies are mostly animated.
Uh-huh.
Do we count that?
Yeah. Avatar, like the Na'vi blue people are all...
That's almost complete animation.
animation.
All of that was done on a soundstage.
Right.
Like, do we count that?
And not to go on like a whole rant here, but you know, like I saw somebody talking about it just the other day where it's like, you know, we consider obviously films like Polar Express and you know, those kinds of films.
Those horrific 3D animated films that fall into the uncanny valley.
Yes, they're animated films, but like Avatar isn't.
Yeah.
Isn't that a little ridiculous?
It is. It's very silly.
It just makes our jobs like, well, okay, what do we do about this?
And this is probably... Tron is the first example that really makes it like, well, what do we do?
And you know what? Honestly, I think the best thing that we can do is talk about those kinds of films when they're relevant in videos like this. The shorts and shows and kind of wrap up the year kind of
Videos.
things. Because
we need to cut it off somewhere, and so if movies are saying that they're live action, maybe we just leave them in the live action category and don't watch them.
I'm looking at you, Lion King 2019.
That being said, we'll watch Lion King 2019, because that is just an animated film. And we might watch Avatar: The Blue People as well.
Who knows? It's more so a thing of like, we need to take note of it because it's important to the history of animation. But is it important enough that we need to dedicate a whole episode to watching the film that, you know, like, tries to scrape by with not crediting any animators?
Life of Pi.
Life of Pi. I'm looking at you. Anyway, we're getting off topic.
Totally off topic, but this is a topic that this is a conversation we have a lot off screen because we don't know what to do. And every year it gets harder and harder to make these stipulations or determinations and stuff.
Yeah. So, anyway, I think we had a really solid group of shorts and shorts. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. There's fantastic animation all across the countries,
well, not
the
just
world.
Fantastic animation, but like revolutionary, experimental, some definitely like classics in here.
So like this was a good chunk. I honestly could recommend practically everything we watched. Yeah.
And even if something's like not necessarily to your taste, it's still an interesting note in just the history of animation.
For sure.
And it's been that way too for the theatrical films, but we'll talk about that we'll talk about that more next time.
Indeed, because next time is the 1982 award show, where Tennille and I will tell you what we thought was our personal favorites and the bad things, I guess.
Yeah.
See you guys then.
Bye-bye.
Joy, 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 joy.